Welcome in the zone. I'm your host, Brian, and after 2 weeks and 20 interviews, the Baltimore Ravens have officially announced their newest head coach for the organization, their fourth in their franchise's history. And that man, that hire is Jesse Minter, the former Los Angeles Chargers defensive coordinator, and he is without a doubt the perfect hire for the Ravens, and I will tell you exactly why in the rest of this video.
Once you get in a zone, it's kind of like you're in a zone, and there's nothing that can really phase you.
Just being in that zone.
You know he's in the zone. He's making checks.
I just felt like I was in the zone.
Man, I was in the zone that night.
I was in the zone.
You definitely be in the zone.
Just in the zone.
I do feel like I'm in the zone right now, but I feel like we are in the zone.
Now, the first reason that Jesse Minter is the perfect hire for the Ravens is the fact that he is a defensive-minded coach. And if you listen to my last podcast episode or have talked to me outside of this podcast, you know that I've been clamoring for the Ravens to hire a head coach with a defensive mindset. The reason being is that the Ravens' whole structure, their whole organization is based off of having a defense that is fearsome, tenacious, aggressive, and just hunts down the opposition. And they have not had that in recent years. It hasn't been that defense that I remember watching growing up, or the defense led by Ray Lewis or Terrell Suggs. It's really been the weak point of this entire team for the last few years. So to have Jesse Minter in is phenomenal in my opinion. He brings in a real new look and a new idea and scheme to bringing back that old school Ravens defense. Now, some people question his resume, what he's been through, or how can he coach? But I have no reason to. I look at that resume and I don't see a reason to hesitate or reason to wonder why he is a head coach candidate or why he is one of the better head coaches head coach candidates in this year's cycle. You look at where he started. He started in 2017 in the NFL. That was his first NFL gig with the Ravens. He coached from 2017 to 2020 as the Ravens defensive back coach and later as the assistant defensive coordinator. In 2021, he coached 1 year at Vanderbilt as their defensive coordinator. And then in 22, he switched over to coach under Jim Harbaugh as the defensive coordinator for the Michigan Wolverines. For 22 and 23, he was with the Wolverines. He led one of the nation's top defenses in the entire college football realm those 2 years. And in his second year there in 2023, he ended up winning a national championship, which many people said, had spoken about how good that defense was to the point where it not only led them to the championship, but it won them the national championship that year. If you look then, in his 2024 campaign, he decided to move on to the Los Angeles Chargers to follow Jim Harbaugh, the former head coach of the Michigan Wolverines and now the head coach of the Chargers. He followed him over in 2024 to take over a Chargers defense that was one of the worst in the league. If you look at every single major defensive statistical category, that's rushing yards per game allowed, passing yards per game allowed, touchdowns allowed, touchdowns scored on defense, takeaways, sacks, and so many others. If you look at every single one of those categories, the Chargers, before the Minter hire, ranked anywhere between the 24th best and the 30th best defense in the league in those categories. Now, put into effect that is the bottom 25% of the league. Once Minter was hired in 24 and in 25, those rankings for each season were anywhere between the best in the NFL to the 10th best. So for me, there's no question as to why he should be one of the highly touted candidates and why he did get interviewed by everyone but the Buffalo Bills. And to me, when I see this as a Ravens fan, it excites me and it makes me think of how good this defense can become, because everywhere Minter goes, he finds a way to not only improve the defense statistically, but also he finds a way to make that improvement a formula to win games and bring his teams to playoff hopes or playoff chances. The second reason Minter is such a perfect hire for the Ravens is his personality and his character. Now, this is a Ravens team that has a lot of veterans coming on and coming back to lead this team. You look at Lamar, Mark Andrews, Ronnie Stanley, Roquan Smith, Kyle Van Noy. All these players are 28 or older going into next season. So having a coach with a personality that is mixed with composure and fieriness was the perfect pick. And that is exactly what Minter brings. He has the composure, he has the leadership, and he has the knowledge to coach these veteran players, but he also has the fire and hunger of a new first-time head coach to really motivate this team to reach newer heights. And that is what is really exciting to see about Minter himself when he comes on to coach his first season with the Ravens. And I know a lot of people probably don't notice him as a fiery head coach if you don't watch him, or at least a fiery coach in general. But if one thing that sticks in my head is a tweet that had come out showing, this was years ago now, and I think they just resurfaced because of this new hire, was when Minter on the Michigan Wolverines as a defensive coordinator beat Ohio State, and after the game walked all the way across the field waving goodbye to the Ohio State sidelines, which just shows that little fire and that little edge that he can bring to really motivate and to bring up this Ravens team that needs that motivation, that has really lacked it in the last few years with just a voice that has been there for a while. So I think Minter brings this perfect balance of composure and of fiery hunger to really improve and bring this Ravens team to the best level they can be. The third and final reason why Minter is the perfect head coach hire for the Baltimore Ravens is the fact that he has a history with the program, with the franchise. And like I said earlier, that history was his first NFL opportunity, his first NFL coaching opportunity, which was from 2017 to 2020 when he was a defensive backs coach and an assistant defensive coordinator. Now, many of you probably wonder, like, what does history have to do with it? Well, many teams have their own culture. Well, the Ravens for the past 30 years have always instilled a culture that has been consistent through their entire existence. That is what they are. So having him have that experience and exposure already makes it so much easier to put him in as the new head coach, to implement him as the new head coach, because they don't have to relearn or just teach those culture and expectations to Minter. They don't have to teach it to their head coach. If you would have hired someone like Brian Flores or Robert Saleh, they would have been very knowledgeable, very good, but you'd have to kind of teach them the culture because they've never experienced it, and then you'd have to hope that they can implement that culture and reteach it to not only the current players that are there that have been exposed to this culture, but also the rookies and new players that will come in via free agency. So having Minter have that experience and have that exposure will benefit them greatly and actually put them a little bit ahead of the 8 ball as far as getting their culture back on track. Because the biggest point of this hire was to get rid of the stale voice in John Harbaugh and bring in a young, hungry coach that understood what the expectations were, what is expected of him, and what this culture is about, which is defense, domination, fear, imposing fear in other teams, and just overall just aggressiveness and playing to a standard that is championship contender level. And for those reasons, those 3 reasons that I pointed out in this video, is exactly why Minter is the perfect hire for the Baltimore Ravens and why I'm excited to see how this first season under the new head coach will look.